Before we get into today's video, I highly recommend going to watch last night's. This is kind of like a sequel to that. Basically, in last night's video, we went on Metacritic and we read some negative Elden Ring reviews, and it was very mind-numbing, to say the least. However, today, I wanted to come back here and read some of the positive reviews. Because while, yes, deep down, I know this is a good game, this is a video that I felt like I needed to make. Because you guys have heard me say my piece on Elden Ring many times at this point, you know. It's a good game, it's just I'm not really hot on it. It's not a game I really want to return to anytime soon. It's just, rather than it being a game that I started to love more and more over time, it's been a game that I've started to dislike more and more over time. So I'm hoping that by the time we get to the end of this video, and after I read some of these reviews, hopefully I can start to, you know, appreciate and love the game a bit more than I do now. What I really don't get about all these low ratings here is how someone can buy a Souls-like and complain about its Souls-like style. Elden Ring is a Souls-like in an open world, and while this is its biggest strength, it seems to turn out as its Achilles heel as well. 90% of users rating low argue like they expected the next epic, narration-driven mainstream roleplay opera with accessible gameplay, an average or at least scalable difficulty, and a somewhat cinematic approach to quests and storytelling. So maybe the real problem with Elden Ring is the extreme hype making more casual gamers buy it for all the wrong reasons and certainly with the wrong expectations. And this is what led to disappointment and absurdly emotional and negative reviews. However, from an objective point of view, a 9 or 10 is 1,000 times more justified than any kind of review bombing, at least if you're up to a highly rewarding challenge and a pretty unique approach to open world gaming, giving you tons of options and challenges without holding your hand all the time, or if you like well executed game mechanics, masterful artwork, and stunning visuals that are not outdated at all. If you're not, simply let it be. Don't write these absurd reviews if a game does not meet all the cheesy expectations it was never intended to meet. As if this review didn't make it obvious enough, if you go back and watch last night's video, you know, everybody that was leaving the negative reviews, you know, the grammar was pretty bad, the sentences were not structured properly, almost none of them knew how to break up paragraphs the same way that this person did. It just goes to show, you know, I'm not saying everybody who hates Elden Ring is dumb. I'm just saying, you know what, I don't even have to say anything. I mean, the proof is just right here. Again, I'm not saying you're dumb if you hate Elden Ring, I'm just saying the type of people that would go out and write an absurd review the same way that the people in last night's video were. Just, you know, there's a bit of a difference there. There's a difference between constructive criticism and a valid critique and just utter nonsense like what we were reading in last night's video. It was so mindless. But yeah, I mean, you know, in last night's video, I had to pause constantly and kind of give my thoughts on it, but I really don't have anything to add here. I do think Elden Ring's biggest strength and weakness was the fact that, you know, there was so much hype around the game that it ended up appealing to more people than ever before, even outside of the From Software community, and you had so many of these casuals coming into the game not knowing what to expect, expecting, you know, like a big open world RPG, think like the next Breath of the Wild or the next Horizon Zero Dawn or whatever. But instead, they essentially got Dark Souls and an open world formula, and they weren't ready for it. Personally, I'm a fan of all these kinds of games. I love Horizon Zero Dawn, I love the Far Cry's and Assassin's Creeds, but I also like a game like Elden Ring. And I can definitely say, while both of those kinds of games are open world, they are two very different kinds of open worlds. Elden Ring is very combat-centered, very light on the story, but it's heavy on lore. And it's not uncommon to go 20 hours in the game for at least on a first playthrough if you don't know what you're doing. I'd expect at least a good 10 to 20 hours between cutscenes, if I'm being honest, outside of, like, you know, boss introductions. Yeah, for anybody that was going into this expecting, like, I don't know, the next Far Cry or Fallout or whatever, like something real RPG story-centered, I could see why they were disappointed, but at the same time, that's kind of on them for not doing the research. Enough of the unreliable emotional review bombs from users. I used to consider users just as, if not more credible with the reviews of a game than the critics, but these days they seem too quick to complain about a game than post any sound criticism. Elden Ring has story, a beautiful open world with next-gen art design and graphics, the controls and action are smooth, and there are loads of content to keep players exploring while developing and honing the skills to survive in the unforgiven lands between. I 100% agree with that. I don't understand why people get so emotional and come on here and just review. I mean, look at that, over 2,000 people did it. Again, there's a difference between, like, valid critiques, criticism, and reviews, and then just getting emotional and review bombing because you suck at a game. I like the game a lot. The performance on PS5 is not ideal yet, but exploring the open world is super cool. That is one knock against the game. It seems like nowadays those issues have been fixed, but I heard that at launch there was a good deal of performance issues, especially on PC, but one of the reasons that I kind of forgive that is because you gotta remember, before Elden Ring, From Software was still technically like a AA studio. They really didn't hit AAA status until Elden Ring, which kind of makes me sad because now I realize what was technically a AA studio put out a game that was, you know, a million times more complex, deep, and interesting than even the AAA studios can. Again, not all AAA studio games are bad. In fact, I'm kind of a sucker and I like the AAA gaming scene. I love those games. They're great. I'm the guy that's buying all the Assassin's Creeds and the Far Cry's. Like, I'm one of those guys. Furthermore, I beat Assassin's Creed Valhalla in a matter of like 5 days. I'm okay, I promise. That's just how I am. When the games drop, I play through them, I enjoy them, I beat them. But I gotta admit, it's a little disappointing when you get a game like, I don't know, Watch Dogs Legion. And remember, that's coming from a AAA company, and then you got something kind of more like AA tier, like From Software putting out something like Elden Ring. It's just... there's so much potential in these games, man. My first review, I had given a grade 4 on the PS5 version. The grade 4 is referring to performance, not to the game, so I decided to play the PS4 version, which is backwards compatible on the PS5, and the game is much, much better than the PS5 version. That's interesting. So I guess the PS4 version on the PS5, at least at launch, was running better than the actual designated PS5 version. That's really interesting. The game starts a little monotonous, and then it gets very good, really addictive. That's why I changed the note from 4 to 9, because it's a very good game. I'm being fair with the devs. When they fix the PS5 version, I'll give it a 10. Yeah, that's one thing I gotta say. At the beginning of the game, I personally just can't stand the beginning of Elden Ring. Like, on a first playthrough, it's okay, but on repeat playthroughs, when you have to start up, like, a new character, or if you choose to start up a new character, it is just... ugh. That's one of the things that kills Elden Ring's replayability for me, because you can either go New Game Plus and have the first 3/4 of the game be so ridiculously and mind-numbingly easy that you don't even want to play it in the first place until you get to the last quarter of the game, which, honestly, I really like the last quarter of the game where the difficulty spike happens, but it's just the fact that there is a difficulty spike, and it's not a consistent difficulty. Like, I know it's an open world, so it would have been impossible for them to balance it properly otherwise, but it's really annoying. If it wasn't for the first 3/4 of the game and New Game Plus being so mind-numbingly easy, and then the last quarter just being, like, you know, what it actually should have been the whole time, then honestly, there's a chance I might still be playing Elden Ring, but just considering the fact that I have to spend so many hours getting back up to that point, and then I only get that little bit of bliss for, like, an hour just clearing out those last 4 bosses, it's like, I just don't really see a reason to go back. And then if I would start up a new character to make things harder on myself, it's like, there's so much grinding and exploring I'd have to do and all this different stuff to get properly leveled to get back up to that point. I'd have to go through all the copy and pasted dungeons and bosses again, and I'm just... I'd rather not fight another 47 Tree Spirits, 64 Crucible Knights. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but, you know, it gets a little monotonous, and then all the dungeons are the same, but dungeons are, like, the best way to get a lot of runes really fast to get prepared for the next boss, especially in Limgrave. You gotta remember, at Limgrave, the bosses drop anywhere from, like, I don't know, 1 to 5k runes, and then the guards outside of the gate drop you, like, I don't know, 40 or 60 runes per kill, so it's really not gonna do you anything by killing them. That's just my little take on it. Again, you know, it's an open world Souls game, and I honestly don't believe Elden Ring was meant to be this infinitely replayable experience similar to the other Souls game, because the other ones, you know, it's real linear, you get in, just bop, 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 go through the bosses, and it's all, like, perfectly scaled and balanced the whole way through, whereas Elden Ring, you know, I have a hard time believing From Software expected anyone to play that game infinitely like the other Souls games. I honestly believe Elden Ring is meant to be one of those experiences you go in, you do everything, you have, like, this full, complete experience, like 80 to 100 hours, and then you just kind of, like, put it down for a while, because otherwise, if you try to do something like what I did, where I did 5 playthroughs back to back to back, I got the Platinum Trophy, I did almost every single NPC quest in the game, I got all the different things, I tried all these different builds, and now, honestly, I'm so burnt on the game that anytime that I pick up my copy to put it in my PS4, I don't even want, like, I feel genuinely ill just looking at the game, like, I'm not even kidding, that is how burnt out I am. Every time I look at the game, I get this feeling of unwell, like, just, I don't even want to go near it. I feel like that goes beyond the game, though, as well, because with me being a content creator, I spend so much more time, honestly, like, dealing with the community and making videos than even playing the game itself some days. Like, editing these videos takes forever, you know, going through comments, reading those, and replying to those, that takes a fair bit of time. And with Elden Ring being From Software's latest, greatest, and biggest game to date, you know, there's a lot of toxicity in the community, so honestly, I don't know if I'm genuinely burnt on the game or if I'm just burnt out on the community. I'm really not sure. I'm really tempted to, like, get on my Xbox, you know, not the PS4 version, because that's where I have the Platinum, you know, I just want to get on the Xbox and just go through, play it off camera, do, like, a complete playthrough on a new character, and I wonder if that would change my opinion on the game or make me like it anymore. I'm not sure. I had previously done, like, 2 playthroughs on my Xbox back when I was making my Elden Ring series. I was just trying to see if there was anything else that I missed, any other builds I want to utilize, but otherwise I wasn't actually, like, trying to enjoy the game. I was just kind of, like, blasting through it, but I'm really tempted to just start up a new character and just try to enjoy the experience, stick to one build, just like really get invested in it. I'm not sure. I might have to try that. Anyway, sorry for such a long tangent. Back to the reviews. When do companies want to commit and provide a quality product? Frame rates on next-gen consoles are an absolute joke. They didn't even bother to provide a consistent experience for console gamers, considering that they are all using the same hardware. Also should be noted that this is not their first game. They have at least developed 5 Souls games on the PS4 platform. I think they should have enough expertise to fully utilize PlayStation's API, but they don't care. And you have to remember, I'm currently looking at the PlayStation 5 reviews for Elden Ring, so this review right here just kind of shows their lack of knowledge as to how consoles and technology in general works. Just because they have experience with the PlayStation 4 platform does not mean they have experience with the PlayStation 5 platform. If you look back at the PlayStation 3, the difference between the cell processor and then PlayStation 4 CPU, there was a big difference. PlayStation went from being the platform nobody wanted to develop for during the PS3 generation to the one that most developers actually went towards in the 8th generation. So saying that they don't care is just, that's not it. You gotta remember, a good deal of Elden Ring's development happened during the pandemic, and while that is no excuse, it is at least partly a reason. So imagine developing this massive open world game for not only last-gen consoles and trying to make sure it actually runs there, which the game barely runs on base Xbox One. On like Xbox One X, it runs quite well, in fact, but like an Xbox One S or a base Xbox One, the game's honestly not that great. It runs at a really sloppy dynamic resolution and the frame rates are all over the place, but at least on the PS4 side of things, you know, the game is a bit more stable, it runs quite well, and then they also had to optimize it and make sure that it ran properly on the next-gen consoles, the Xbox Series X, the Xbox Series S, and then the PS5, as well as PC, which, yeah, trying to develop and stabilize an experience as big as this on every single console, you know, it's a bit of a task to take on. And while, yes, you know, it would have been nice for the game to release in a more solid state, unfortunately, that's just where we're at in the modern games industry. Is it an excuse? No, but it's a reason. All we can do is hope for better going forward. My only problem with this is, while yes, frame rates were somewhat unstable on the next-gen platforms of PC, like, I've seen gameplay of it, there was like a few stutters here and there, but it's not like it was some unplayable thing. It wasn't like Cyberpunk on launch on like base Xbox One running at like 600p, 10 FPS. And the way the review started, when do companies want to commit and provide a quality product? I mean, it's still a quality product. I'd just say it's a quality product that wasn't well optimized at launch. But again, with all the patches that have come out, I'm pretty sure it's all good now. But hey, at the very least, he still gave it a 10, so there's that. This review contains spoilers. Click expand to review. Oh god, there's a lot here. Okay, a true masterpiece. After 200 hours and 2 playthroughs, I could truly say this is Miyazaki's best work to date. The depth and layers in this game is almost overwhelming. FromSoft took most of what was amazing from Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Sekiro and mashed it all up into the enormous open world of Elden Ring. Combat feels very similar to Dark Souls with a few additions. A combat system that didn't need innovative change as it's already superior to almost everything else. A ridiculous amount of weapons, armor, sorceries, incantations, ashes of war, weapon arts, and summons. Over 100 bosses, NPC quests so deep and rich that they feel nearly impossible to complete without the community, endless and rewarding exploration, a simple but effective crafting system. Honestly, I have never ever used the crafting system in Elden Ring. Actually, no. I used it one time to make, like, freezing pots, I think, on Millennia, but that was really it. There's still weapons and armor I'm hunting. There's still NPC quests I haven't finished. There's still multiple endings I need to complete. This is all after over 200 hours. It's nice to see such a massive game feel like a completely finished product, one of the best games ever made, and a must-play for any Souls fans or for those looking for a new experience and a new challenge. I agree with this. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about the game having too much content, but that is part of why I'm, you know, very scared to even start up another playthrough, because there's so much that I don't even know what to prioritize and focus on. That's the thing with Elden Ring. I don't think anybody was actually meant to see everything in the game or, like, acquire every single weapon in the game. I mean, I'm not saying that it's wrong to go out and do that. This is obviously a very different experience to the Dark Souls games where, you know, going through and getting every weapon was very possible and doable within a reasonable amount of time. But if you're trying to do that in this game without any guides, oh god, good luck. It's a miracle that I managed to get the Platinum Trophy in this game within 80 hours. I have no idea how I did it. This review contains spoilers. Click expand to view. El mejor juego que he jugado en mi vida, el mundo, la dirección de arte y el gameplay me encanta todo. Como obra de arte bella from software, generos épicos enemigos con design incrível vacante super able platinar experience memorable. That was pretty close. I think. Yeah, I'm not even gonna try to read this one. You know what? I'm curious. Let's pop this into Google Translate. What did this person say? All right, so I'll just put this in here. Detect language. I don't even know what this is. The application is wonderful, Marno, and when will the vision be with you? What? Masterpiece. Very good, fun, exquisite, delightful, enjoy thrill-inducing fun. This is a long review and it has a winky face at the end, so now I must know, what does this say? Alright, so apparently this is Catalan. I didn't even know that was a language. Alright. First, I'll comment that I'm not a fan of the Dark Souls saga. I've played quite a few games, but they've never felt like masterpieces. Never until now. Elden Ring has managed to combine the best of the saga and the best of the freedom of open worlds. It's not that the game offers an exorbitant amount of content, but how it presents it. Everything in this world is shrouded in mystery. Everything seems to be trying to pique your curiosity. It's amazing how it manages to keep you spinning without a clear goal and yet never lose the player's interest. The amount of options and alternatives to deal with the enemies is immense, and it will be difficult not to find a style of play in which you feel comfortable. This is another of the improvements compared to other installments. You have 1,000 options to adapt the game to your liking, and this can become really rewarding for all those who are afraid of the difficulty. I have good news. The game is demanding, but for the first time in the saga, if you simply explore and upgrade your equipment and level, which happens naturally, you can cope with all enemies in a fairly simple way. I would only recommend not buying the game to anyone who doesn't want to waste 2 or 3 months of their life immersed in a virtual world. Considering the fact that this one wasn't even in English, it was like one of the best I've read in terms of grammar, sentence structure. Good job, fellow reviewer. Alright, we got one last review here. This one looks a little spicy. I can't set less than 10 for this game because the amount of everything in the game is so huge, so much work has been done, so it's a 10 out of 10 for sure. I beat the game in 114 hours. 114 hours with a bunch of exclamation points. 114 hours. I get the point! It's 10 times more than should be, or at least 5 times. It's too long. Last 20 hours, despite it was ending, I played just to finish it. Oh, maybe they mean like the last bit of the game feels a little drawn out or weird, which I could totally understand. I'm not sure if it's that or if they mean that the game is just too long in general. I definitely feel like there's some fluff that could have been cut out, potentially. The time that it takes to get between the main bosses in the game. Like, if you know what you're doing, it's really not that bad and doesn't take that long, but in a first playthrough, at least for a player like me that tends to, you know, stick to the main path of a game, I definitely do wish there was a little bit of fluff or maybe, you know, a bit of rebalancing between the main bosses in the game. Because in my playthroughs, you know, in Dark Souls games, I usually just go main boss to main boss to main boss, maybe veer off if I find like a fun optional area and boss that I'll take out, I'll go back to the main path. But in Elden Ring, you know, you can go through the game just sticking to the main path, but it's really not advisable. And it's also not the easiest thing to do on a first playthrough. Like, you can do it. I mean, heck, you can beat the game on rune level 1, technically. But on a first playthrough, good luck with that. Some other drawbacks: repeatable bosses slash mini bosses. About 20 to 25 hours could be saved without repeatable bosses. I mean, I wouldn't know. I don't know if I call that a drawback. I mean, I do definitely agree that there was too many repeated and recycled mini bosses. However, unless you were going through the game trying to defeat every single boss, and I don't think it's that bad that they're there because, again, they're optional. Again, I mean, it does suck that there are so many recycled mini-bosses and such, but at the same time, they are optional, so putting the time thing into here saying that it could save you 20 to 25 hours, I don't feel like that's relevant because, again, they are optional. So from a game design critique stance, this is totally valid, but saying that cutting those out of the game just for the sake of saving the player time, I don't know if I really agree with that because they're not mandatory. A more realistic game name could be Dark Souls 4. It's more like a sequel, not a whole new game. Well, not really. I mean, in its gameplay mechanics, sure, but in terms of the lore, it's something entirely else completely. Honestly, I think From Software must change and change something because the difference between Dark Souls 1 and Elden Ring is not that bad. Ooh, I gotta disagree there. Have you played Dark Souls 1 recently? It's, yeah, they've definitely made some great improvements here. The one thing I would say that they need to change with their engine is the netcode. I don't do PvP anymore because their netcode is abysmal. I don't ever do online play or PvP in Elden Ring because it's terrible. It's almost the same game with just different graphics. I can't really agree with that one. If FS next game will be made in the same way as Elden Ring, I'd probably miss it because I don't think spending another 100 hours of my life playing the same mechanics will be the good choice. Honestly, I mean, that's up to you. The game doesn't have to take 100 hours. I did my first playthrough in less than half of that. Again, though, the way I see it, time is a currency. Only spend it on the things that you actually want to spend it on. I have several other games in my playlist which I could finish instead. Then it goes on to list a bunch of them, games with different experiences and without repeatable bosses. Yeah, that's totally valid. Anyways, I like Elden Ring. It's really one of the best games ever made, and they finally fixed hitboxes. Yes, thank God for it. Well, honestly, I mean, it didn't take them that long to do it. Everything after DS2 was fine, honestly. But lore in Bloodborne is much better. I mean, that's opinion-based, really. I mean, it depends what we're talking about. If you're talking lore quality, I mean, honestly, I still don't even know what's happening in Bloodborne. There's something about eating umbilical cords. I'm not really sure. Yeah, that was some positive episode of Elden Ring reviews. Again, just kind of spinning off of what we did last night. Originally, today's video was going to be the start of a new series. I wanted to see if I could beat Dark Souls 1 as a mage, because I've never done a mage build in that game, so I kind of wanted to do like a mini series just playing through the game, because as you guys probably know, Dark Souls 1 is my favorite From Software game. However, I kind of needed to ask you guys for help, because I don't know how to go about starting like a mage playthrough in that game. I don't know what starter class to choose. I don't know what quests I need to do, what items I should be looking for, so if you guys could let me know, I'd really appreciate that. Anyway, as always, a shout out to the patrons and channel members: Carmen's Fave Grandma, Little Bitty Tab, Big Daddy Matty, Tulipasaurus Rex, Razak, Polar Ray, De Webster, Lamas, Bianca, Purgatory, Drippy Sant, Mellow Lasking, Computer Magic, Mason Irving, TJY15, Flame 71, Aaron Reynolds, and Unknown. Thank you guys for watching. Have an amazing day. Stay beautiful. I love you all. And remember, don't go hollow. Peace.